This episode is brought to you by the listeners of this podcast. That means you, as well as by our friends at Plain Products, a fabulous sister-owned, vegan-owned company offering cruelty-free, vegan, zero-waste personal care products with an innovative refill system that is literally closing the loop on waste. Here's how it works. You choose your products, shampoo, conditioner, body lotion, body wash, whatever you're looking for, they have it. You choose your fragrance. There's an option for no fragrance. There's a mint and rosemary, and there's a citrus and lavender. You choose a pump if this is the first time you're ordering, and then you enjoy whatever you get in the mail. And when you're running low, you simply order a refill. And when the new products arrive, you switch pumps and you return the empties in the same box and with the label for free. Plain Products sanitizes the aluminum bottles and refills them, literally closing that loop. So if you are interested in trying them out, they are so fabulous. I think they're going to become your favorite personal care product company as well. Go to joyfulvegan.com/hair, because and get your exclusive 15% discount, 15% off of all of your Plain products. Every time you order, you get the link and you get that code over at joyfulvegan.com/hair. I know you're going to become a regular customer as well. And we have some fun giveaways coming up. So make sure you're on my mailing list to participate over at joyfulvegan.com. Welcome to Food for Thought, everyone. Today's episode is Ketchup's Fishy History. My name is Colleen Patrick-Goudreau. I am your host. I hope you're doing fabulously well. I did not want to follow up the last episode with another word-related episode. I like to vary the topics and the themes, but as I am in the final weeks of finishing my manuscript for my 7th book, might be in the 8th book. It depends on how you count them. If you count the self-published On Being Vegan and the updated version of the 30-Day Vegan Challenge, this would be the 8th book. I mean, actually, it would be the 9th book, but really, for all intents and purposes, it's the 7th book, and it's due very soon, the manuscript. And I already had this episode in the queue for you, and I didn't want to disappoint you. I know that you're probably going about your life and you aren't really paying that much attention, and you would probably be fine without an episode from me today, but I had to decide if I wanted to give you nothing or if I wanted to give you a language-related, animology-related episode. That's what I thought, and so that's what I did. And this is the kind of thing that I feel really beholden to you, and especially to those of you who support this podcast, to do what I say I'm going to do, which is get content out there that, that's food for thought. And of course, you can always share with me what you think. As a Patreon supporter, we have a monthly live stream. It's coming up in a few days for this month, and I hope you can join me. So head over there to joyfulvegan.com/donate, and you can pick your perks over at Patreon. It'll link you over to Patreon. So I am fascinated by etymology and the origins of words, English words, because that's my first language, and especially those words related to animals. And I call these animal-related words and expressions animologies. Some of these animologies are phrases and idioms you already say or recognize. You can hear the animals in them. Obvious ones like kill 2 birds with 1 stone is an obvious one, but there are gentle ones and there are positive ones as well. But those are ones that are most familiar to most people, most English speakers. And then we have words that are also very obvious, that their roots are obviously from animals, and some that are hidden. Now, whether they're hidden or not, sometimes there's positive connotations, sometimes there's negative connotations, most definitely negative when you're talking about killing 2 birds with 1 stone. But we also have pretty neutral ones, and we also have some that are so hidden that you wouldn't know they came from animals. But that's what my job is to tell you what words and expressions we use that actually derive from animals. And the point of all of this is, yes, to demonstrate that our use and abuse of animals goes back, and it's deep, and it's a long history, but also our connection to them and our being enamored with them also goes way back. Now, today is the former, not the latter. Today's episode is not just an animology, it's also a history of food. And I love food history, but it is the history of a food stuff that is so common in the United States that you would probably never think it had a form other than the form it has today, and that is ketchup. It's an incredibly popular condiment in the United States, but it did not start in the United States, and it did not start as this thick tomato-based, somewhat spicy, but ketchup's not really known for spice, sauce that we use today, this thick sauce. So originally, ketchup was made from fermented fish. Now, you wouldn't know that unless you knew Middle Chinese. I personally don't know Middle Chinese, but the word ketchup is a Chinese word, kitsiap, and the characters combine to mean pickled fish or pickled juice, pickled fish brine. That's what it means. And it's basically a sauce from fermented fish. Fish sauces were very commonly used in ancient China, later introduced to Indonesia and Malaysia, and they were further developed using ingredients like soybeans and anchovies and other spices. Portuguese traders encountered these sauces during their travels in Asia, and they brought them back to Europe in the 16th century. Now, we talked about the Portuguese being in Japan in the 16th century. The Portuguese were all over the place. Of course, they were traders. And that's how we get the word tempura. And if you're interested in that, you can go listen to that episode on Japanese being vegan in Japan. I recorded that episode when we got back from Japan. And so the Portuguese were in Asia. They saw these sauces, they brought them back to Europe, and they became incredibly popular, especially among European sailors and merchants. And so, according to the OED, according to Oxford English Dictionary, the word ketchup first appears in English in the 17th century, with reference to a type of sauce encountered by British travelers and British traders and British colonists in Southeast Asia. And these sauces were introduced to the British, most likely in Malaysia and Indonesia. And there were similar sauces to the ketchups from China. And now you see a variety of ingredients, including anchovies, including mushrooms, including walnuts, and including oysters. And so all of these kinds of sauces that were referred to as ketchups, kind of as a catch-all for these kind of briny, salty sauces. That's what you see. And you see them definitely becoming more popular in the 18th century. So mushroom ketchup is what came to the New World, came to what is now the United States, with English settlers during the colonial period. And while the exact date of its introduction is unclear, historical records suggest that mushroom ketchup was already known and used in England during the 18th century, so it would have just come over when they were establishing colonies in America. And they would have brought, of course, various culinary traditions, various ingredients with them, including condiments like mushroom ketchup. Over time, mushroom ketchup and other traditional English foods would have been adapted to suit local tastes and local ingredients in America. And the most significant change came in 1801 when tomatoes were added to the recipe. So tomatoes in ketchup, ketchup as a tomato-based condiment does not happen until 1801. It was first documented in a book called The Sugar House Book by Sandy Addison. Maybe 200 years from now, someone will be talking about one of my books. So I want to bring her name up. Sandy Addison wrote a book called The Sugar House Book. And in the recipe for ketchup, she boils tomatoes, cooks tomatoes, adds spices like mace and nutmeg and allspice and cloves and cinnamon and ginger and all of those kind of more warming spices, and boils this mixture, thickens it, cools it, and bottles it. Now, this wasn't sold commercially. It was a recipe, but that is the first evidence of a recipe using tomatoes. However, fast forward, so that was 1801. Fast forward to 1869, when a man named Henry John Heinz started a company, this is in 1869, that initially produced and sold horseradish, but later expanded its product line to include a variety of other foods, including its now famous tomato ketchup, which was introduced in 1876. As I mentioned, ketchup had already existed in various forms before Heinz, including these early versions made from mushrooms and walnuts and other ingredients. And then you have this 1801 recipe using tomatoes, but Heinz's tomato ketchup was the first to be mass produced and widely distributed, revolutionizing the condiment industry. And so originally, unripe tomatoes were used, which necessitated the addition of a preservative called sodium benzoate to prevent spoilage. But in the early 1900s, the Food and Drug Administration banned sodium benzoate, which prompted Heinz to switch to using ripe tomatoes. And ripe tomatoes naturally contain pectin, which is a natural preservative. There's some pectin in the unripe, but it's more prevalent in ripe tomatoes. And so his use of ripe tomatoes and then the addition of sugar and the addition of vinegar set a new standard for ketchup production, and it popularized the condiment in its modern form. And so that's how we have this version that we have today became thicker, because it was a lot more watery before then. All of these other sauces, you can imagine those kind of oyster sauces or those Chinese-based sauces, kind of think of them like soy sauce. They were fermented sauces. They were much thinner. So this revolutionized the condiment industry. And that's how we have this thicker kind of condiment. I wouldn't say sauce, but it's more of a condiment, thicker sauce today because of the pectin in the ripe tomatoes. And so it became hugely popular in the 19th century, became commercialized by other companies who were making ketchup, and it remains one of the most well-known condiments, and certainly Heinz is one of the most well-known brands of ketchup worldwide. Started with them, and so we have a condiment that 97% of Americans have in their homes, but the original concoction, as well as the word itself, included fermented fish. I'm sorry, I hope I haven't ruined it for you. I just wanted you to know the origins of this word come from our use of fermenting animals, and most people wouldn't know that. So now you have a secret weapon, because we don't do that anymore, luckily. Every version and every brand of ketchup I know, there's no fish sauce. So you don't have to ask before you eat ketchup, which is always really nice. But now you have the secret weapon to share some trivia at your next cocktail party, at your next dinner party. And if you are interested in more words and more food words that come from animals, there's an episode I did several years ago called Gut Wrenching. And I did talk about ketchup in that one, but it was brief. Gut wrenching, common words with surprising animal origins. And you will hear the origins, you will hear the animal origins, you will hear the etymologies of words like carnivore, that should be pretty obvious to you. Carnitine, what? Yeah, you've heard of carnitine. Carnitas, course, charcuterie, shambles, slaughter, aspic, isinglass, and pudding. Words that you would not necessarily know were related to animals, and particularly the slaughter of animals. The word slaughter itself, the reason I mention that one is because it also comes from a word for an animal. So go listen to that episode. It's fascinating. I hope you find it fascinating. I think it's interesting, and I would love to hear your thoughts. You can certainly share them with me over at joyfulvegan.com. You can find me on Instagram, and you can certainly find me over at our chat community at Patreon. So I hope you consider joining the club. I hope you consider joining me on a future Joyful Vegan trip. Or maybe I'll see you next week in Vancouver. You can reach out for details. And remember, if you want to say goodbye to single-use plastic for your personal care products, please give Plain products a try. Shampoo, lotion, conditioner. It's my go-to conditioner. It's my go-to body lotion. It's my go-to shampoo. Same with my husband. Each product is in a refillable aluminum bottle and crafted with natural, cruelty-free ingredients delivered right to your door. So go to joyfulvegan.com/hair, get the link and the discount code for 15% off all of your Plain products, and make the switch today. For the animals, this is Colleen Patrick-Goudreau. Thanks for listening.